Everyone believed Eleanor Whitmore's story had ended with Ruth Moore's death. They were wrong. After the funeral, Eleanor didn't disappear. She didn't hide. She didn't run. Instead, she did what she always did best. She stayed visible, helpful, and calm. Grief, she said, should never be faced alone. This time, her kindness found a new home. The nursing wing at St. Mary's Hospital was understaffed, overcrowded, and desperate for volunteers. Eleanor fit perfectly. The staff welcomed her without questions. She brought homemade soup, folded blankets, and spoke softly to patients who no longer had visitors. Nurses trusted her. Doctors nodded politely when they passed her in the hall. Eleanor belonged there. Room 317 was her favorite. Inside lay Helen Carter, 80 years old, barely conscious, her body failing faster than doctors expected. Machines hummed quietly beside her bed. Her breathing was shallow, her skin thin and pale against the white sheets. Helen had no close family left, only a granddaughter, Emily, 22 years old, who sat by the bed every evening, crying quietly. Emily rarely left the room. She slept in the chair, ate vending machine food, and spoke to her grandmother even when Helen didn't respond. Eleanor noticed Emily on her first day. "You shouldn't be alone," Eleanor said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "This is very hard for someone so young." Emily looked up at her with red, swollen eyes. "She's all I have." Eleanor smiled, warm, reassuring. "Then I'll help you take care of her." Emily didn't question it. Why would she? Eleanor looked like safety. That night, Eleanor prepared tea for Helen, just like she always did. The nurse was busy. The room was quiet. The spoon stirred slowly. Emily watched from the corner, trusting completely. And Eleanor Whitmore learned something important. Grief made people blind. Over the next few days, Eleanor became a constant presence in room 317. She adjusted Helen's pillows, wiped her forehead, and spoke softly, as if Helen could hear every word. "You've lived a long life," Eleanor whispered once. "You deserve rest." Emily grew attached to her quickly. "You're so good with her," Emily said one evening. "I don't know how I'd manage without you." Eleanor squeezed her hand. "That's what I'm here for." Helen's condition worsened. Her confusion deepened. Sometimes her eyes fluttered open, unfocused, frightened. Once, when Eleanor stepped out, Helen grabbed Emily's wrist weakly. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't drink." Emily leaned closer. "Grandma." But Helen's eyes closed again, her words lost in the quiet. When Eleanor returned, Emily mentioned it. "She said something strange," Emily said, "about drinking." Eleanor smiled gently. "That happens near the end. The mind wanders." Emily nodded, embarrassed for bringing it up. That night, Helen slept for nearly 16 hours. What Eleanor didn't know was that someone else had noticed her. Nurse Clara Reynolds had worked the night shift for 12 years. She had seen grief, death, and every kind of family dynamic imaginable. Eleanor stood out not because she was kind, but because she was too calm. Clara noticed patterns. Patients Eleanor spent the most time with declined quickly. Not suddenly, gradually, peacefully. Clara reviewed Helen Carter's chart. Sedation levels were higher than expected, still within acceptable limits, but something felt wrong. One evening, Clara entered room 317 unexpectedly. Eleanor was standing by the bedside, holding a cup of tea. Helen's lips were parted. "What's that?" Clara asked. Eleanor didn't flinch. "Her tea. She hasn't been resting." Clara stepped closer. She smelled something bitter beneath the herbs. "I'll take it," Clara said. Eleanor hesitated just for a second. Then she handed it over. That second was enough. Clara sent the cup to the lab. The results came back the next morning. Sedatives, crushed, dissolved, combined carefully to avoid overdose, but ensure suppression, confusion, weakness, slowed breathing. Clara's hands shook as she read the report. She went straight to her supervisor. Security footage was pulled. They watched Eleanor over and over, entering rooms, stirring cups, adjusting for lines just slightly, always calm, always smiling. The hospital contacted the police. Emily was holding Helen's hand when they came. Eleanor stood nearby, serene as ever. "Miss Whitmore," the officer said, "we need you to come with us." Emily turned, confused. "What? Why?" Eleanor looked at Emily one last time. "I was only helping," she said softly. She was suffering. Helen's eyes opened. This time they were clear. "No," Helen whispered. "You were waiting." Eleanor didn't fight when they took her away. She never raised her voice. She never cried. Helen survived. Barely, but enough. With proper care, without Eleanor's help, her condition stabilized. Emily moved her grandmother to another facility. She quit her job to stay with her, sometimes late at night. Emily thought about how icily she had trusted Eleanor, how comforting her voice had sounded, how safe she had felt. It scared her more than anything else. Eleanor Whitmore was charged with multiple counts of attempted murder and medical abuse. As more families came forward, the list grew longer. In court, Eleanor spoke only once. "I ended suffering," she said calmly. "People thank me for that. They just don't know it." She was sentenced to life. Years later, Emily volunteered at a hospice center. She was careful now. She asked questions. She watched closely, because she had learned something Eleanor never understood. Real kindness never needs secrecy, and grief should never be trusted blindly.